Which one? You don't want one? You sure? You sure? Okay. Skittles are very good, so can't go wrong with that. Today I'd like to open with a prayer from 1 Samuel. It's Hannah's prayer, and as my first name is actually Hannah, I feel it's appropriate to start my sermon with that. My heart exults in the Lord, my mouth speaks boldly against my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. Amen. One Saturday morning, I went with a group of friends from work to get a pedicure. It should be known that I rarely get my nails done, as I have a habit to chip or break them by day 2, probably because of all the fidgeting I do. Even so, I felt the need to bond with these group of friends, and if nothing else, an hour of someone massaging my feet certainly couldn't be a bad thing. While waiting for the others to finish up, I got to chatting with one of my friends. She mentioned a video she saw on Facebook and asked if I had seen it yet. I shook my head and stated simply, "Actually, I gave up social media for Lent, so no, I haven't." Immediately, she smiles and says genuinely, "Wow, that's so awesome. You're such a good person." While my friend responding in gentle sweetness is not surprising, her response nonetheless startled me. It was the "you're a good person" remark that stuck. You see, to me, giving up social media isn't exactly a great feat of Christianity. In fact, I grimaced back at her and I shrugged. I said, "I don't really know about that. There are certainly better things I could be doing or giving up for Lent." I felt uncomfortable with her designating me as good, because in truth, Lent snuck up on me quicker than I cared to admit. I picked giving social media up because that's what I did the year prior, and it went pretty well. So in a flash decision, I repeated the fast. In my mind, this was sloppy Christian practice, and I perceived good Lenten sacrifice to be a little bit more demanding of the soul. In comparison with others, I found myself wanting. Which leads into our text today about judgment. When first reading Romans 14, all I really could think of was, okay, cool, so don't judge gluten-free people or vegans so long as the reason behind their dietary restriction is legitimate. That's fair. And let's be honest, the first chunk of this passage is a lot of confusing infinitives and contradictions about food preferences that are unrelatable to our modern understanding. He who observes the day observes it for the Lord, and he who eats does so for the Lord, for he who gives thanks to God, and he who eats not for the Lord, he does not eat and gives thanks to God. What? But as we know, diet and cleanliness were pivotal to the ancient Jewish faith. Leviticus goes into great detail about what is and what isn't okay for Hebrews to consume. Clean animals are those with split hooves who chew the cud, so like cows. And unclean ones are with hooves and they don't chew cud. Or they chew cud but they don't have split hooves, so no camels. Bummer. It goes on to describe and point out many other animals of land, sea, and air. Most of the animals Leviticus lists make sense not to eat. No bugs, no problem. And I'm not even really sure how one goes about making a falcon trap. But the whole point of these clean and unclean animals is summarized as thus: "For I am the Lord who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be your God, and thus you shall be holy, for I am holy." Enough said. Now consider the story of Peter and Cornelius in Acts chapter 10. Waiting for his buddies to make dinner, Peter has a vision of food, don't we all? But the difference was that before Peter frolicked all these unclean creatures, labeled by Moses himself as ones not to be consumed. Things like those tempting pigs, lobsters, and pheasants. I envisioned Peter's dream akin to a Red Lobster commercial, with the swiveling plates full and glistening, and some magic hand diving into the meal with a perfect shiny fork. And you can practically smell the food, but the food is nowhere near you, all for $19.95. Yet Peter hears a voice telling him to eat, and the voice tells him multiple times. Appalled, Peter denies the food 3 times, to which the voice, which is God's voice, of course, claims, "What God has cleansed, no longer consider unholy." It's not long after that Peter meets up with the centurion Cornelius. Cornelius, though a Gentile and a Roman, that's world-dominating superpower that put Jesus to the crucifixion, is a God-fearing man and a devout believer. When Peter talks with Cornelius, his dream suddenly makes sense. It wasn't about food at all. Okay, it was kind of about food, but the imagery of food was a metaphor. Cornelius was the lobster. In other words, what Peter perceived to be truth, perceived to be the one and only way, wasn't the only way. Because Jesus died and rose again, the rules had been flipped like upside-down cake. Instead of this and only this, the faith became yes, this, and that, because both do so for God. Say it with me. Yes, this, and that, because both do so for God. Yes. This and that, because both do so for God. Good job. Interaction's hard, I know. So as long as the meaning was correct, the method for that meaning was irrelevant. Think about when we come up to the altar for communion. Some of us take the common cup. Some opt for the tiny individual cups. Some choose wine, some grape juice. Some of us take communion by intinction, some kneel, some stand. Some of us see communion as a ritual, and others see it as literal. Yes, this and that, because both do so for God. I recall the C.S. Lewis novel, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. One of the pitiful characters, Aslan, is a great benevolent lion who represents Christ, but he's sacrificed on a stone tablet by an evil witch. He dies. But in the early light of the next morning, while the young sisters Lucy and Susan weep over his body, his bonds are freed and he breathes again, bigger and brighter than before. The girls are first aware of his awakening because they hear a loud crack. The tablet Aslan died upon was broken by his massive paws. The laws of old were fractured. In resurrection, Jesus has changed the shape of faith and religion forever. He made it easy for us. We're the ones that like to complicate and confound. You see, we don't have to compare ourselves to others. We don't have to measure each other. We certainly don't have to be judges. How is it that someone's Lenten practice is more authentic, more realistic, more worthy than my own? How can it be that my version of reality is more correct than that of my little nephew's? Am I more right because I participate in multiple avenues within my church? Am I more right than those who come to church at all? Dear parishioners, the method does not matter one iota. It is the meaning that God cares for, is what he will be judging us on. In God's eyes, your life has no requirements, has no categories or restraints. All he sees is why you live your life, and for whom. In truth, I find this realization to be very liberating. There is no right or wrong way to experience God, to experience the Christian faith. My parents, God bless them, get up every morning at 6 a.m. to read their Bibles before they walk the dog. My sister meets up with other young mothers and attends weekly Bible studies. I don't have to do any of that. I mean, I could if I really wanted to, but I don't have to. Instead, I can journal or write. I can sing. I can stand up here and talk with you as I am now. That is how I reflect in my faith and relationship with God. Their experience and my experience, one's not better than the other. Though they are different, they are true. And they are true because of why we each seek God, the intention behind our unique and personal faith. I'll end with what I imagine to be God's message for us all. My people, I offer you up a chafing dish full of understandings and perceptions. I hand you the world, so long as you know that it is I who gives it. And along with it, I give you my salvation. Amen.